50 years ago, a young Fort Worth police officer vanished right after his night shift, disappearing without a trace and leaving his colleagues and family plunged into pain and confusion. Authorities suspected a woman who had been romantically involved with him might be connected. But with no body found and too few clues to pursue, the investigation ultimately stalled. Yet through all those years, a group of investigators never gave up, believing the truth was still hidden somewhere in the very building where he disappeared. Then one day, as workers began renovating the old basement area, they uncovered a small detail that no one had noticed for decades, a detail that would change the entire case and leave the whole city stunned. Before we dive into this shocking story, let us know where you're watching from, and if you love cases that get solved after years in the dark, don't forget to hit subscribe. In 1975, Fort Worth was one of the fastest-growing industrial cities in North Texas. The air here was always thick with the smell of machine oil and metal, with freight trains moving day and night along the rail lines, connecting the downtown area to the exploding suburbs. The city expanded year by year, with residential neighborhoods springing up around mechanical factories and fuel depots, creating a rhythm of life that was both vibrant and tense. Within Fort Worth's administrative system, the downtown police force played a key role, responsible for maintaining order in the central area, where government offices, banks, auto repair shops, and all-night diners intersected and were always bustling. The main headquarters of the Fort Worth Police Department at that time was located in the City Hall Annex, a two-story brick building constructed in the 1930s with a basement for storing records and cramped on-duty rooms. Officer Jack Morales, 25 years old, was one of the capable young officers on the downtown patrol team. He came from a working-class Mexican-American family in the North Side area, joined the force early, and was described as disciplined, quiet, and always willing to take extra shifts when short-staffed. Night patrol work made him familiar with Fort Worth under the glow of yellow lights and the sound of train engines. That July, Texas entered a brutal heat wave, with daytime temperatures often exceeding 100 degrees F and lingering into the night. On one such evening, Jack finished his shift, signed the handover log, and left the City Hall Annex. Some colleagues recalled him carrying a personal file folder, saying he would stop by the basement storage room to review a few old reports before heading home. That was the last time anyone saw him. The next morning, his teammates realized Jack hadn't shown up for the shift change meeting. The landline phone in his apartment rang continuously with no answer. When family members went to check, they found the apartment tidy, the bed unused, and the fridge still holding the food he'd prepared the night before. There were no signs of a struggle or missing property. The family began searching familiar routes, but found nothing unusual. After a day of waiting with no news, they returned to the police headquarters to file an official report. The missing person report was logged by the end of the day, marking the start of a case that no one then imagined would drag on for decades. That very night, the file was transferred to the Fort Worth Police Department's Internal Personnel Division to begin the initial verification steps. Since the missing person was an active duty officer, the officers on the morning shift that day were required to rewrite all reports related to the previous night shift, including the time Jack signed the handover log, the content of radio calls, and the patrol route schedule. The review showed he had completed his duties as required, with no incidents in his assigned area. Command confirmed Jack had not submitted a leave request or called in sick unexpectedly. His personal work schedule noted he was still assigned shifts as usual in the following days. This made his unexplained absence highly suspicious. A temporary internal review team was formed to identify the last locations where he might have been. 3 officers from the same shift were called back to the station to provide statements. They said Jack left the precinct in normal condition, showing no signs of fatigue or stress. One recalled him mentioning wanting to check some old files, but not specifying details. The review team began tracing his path from headquarters into the downtown area. Main routes had witnesses who saw his patrol car passing through North Main Street, heading toward the City Hall Annex, then vanishing from sight. No one could confirm seeing him exit the vehicle or leave with anyone else. The next morning, the internal investigation team was sent to thoroughly inspect the entire City Hall Annex area, believed to be Jack Morales's final stop. This building was part of Fort Worth's old administrative block, consisting of 2 floors and a spacious basement used for storing official records. The structure wasn't complex, but had multiple side exits leading to alleys in the back, which often made controlling access difficult. When the team approached, the entire building was still locked from the night before. The main door had a lead seal and lock with no signs of tampering. However, the side door to the western basement stairwell showed slightly loose hinges, as if it had been pushed hard from inside. Upon entering, dim light and the smell of damp paper, mixed with old iron dust, filled the space. The records room was at the end of the basement hallway, separated from the office area. The door was closed, with no external signs of forced entry or scraping. Jack's personal key was not in the handover inventory, so the technical team used the building's master key to open it. When the door swung open, the room appeared almost intact, files neatly stacked on shelves, the ceiling light still working, the floor covered in a thin layer of dust, typical of old paper. Only a few unusual points caught the officer's attention. In the corner of the main desk was a chair tipped over, next to an open file folder not fully closed. The rug under the desk was slightly askew, one end folded against the wall. On the cement wall surface behind the desk appeared a scratch mark stretching about half a meter, with peeling paint exposing a grayer cement patch, newer than the rest. There were no signs of a major struggle or broken objects, but these small details were fully documented in the report. Forensic police photographed the entire area, numbered the evidence locations, measured the distance from the tipped chair to the wall, and collected dust and paint flake samples for later analysis. On the desk was a cooled coffee cup with a clear rim print on the coaster. The desktop had no bloodstains or scratches, but there seemed to be a circular empty space, just the size of a file folder, suggesting it had been removed. They searched around, but found no dropped files. The rest of the basement showed no abnormalities, with intact document shelves and tightly closed narrow high windows. The investigation team continued checking adjacent rooms, including the equipment storage and security break room. No one on night duty had been in this area, and the security log showed no entries during the suspected time frame. The upstairs administrative area, including accounting and admin offices, was questioned about hearing strange noises or seeing unauthorized personnel. All said no. One admin employee recalled leaving the building quite late, around near midnight, but heard nothing unusual beyond the passing freight trains on North Main, which was very familiar to those working nearby. The external building sweep also found no tire tracks or dropped items. Surrounding parking lots had attendants, and no one reported strangers or unusual incidents. In the initial report sent back to headquarters that afternoon, the investigation team temporarily concluded there was no clear evidence of a crime occurring on site, nor basis to confirm Jack Morales was attacked in the City Hall Annex area. However, they noted the possibility he had been there briefly after ending his shift, based on the open file on the desk and the missing personal key from the property list. The report ended with a note from the team leader: no signs of altercation, no evidence of violence. Morales may have left the building voluntarily or been lured outside by someone. This assessment was forwarded to command, and the case was temporarily handled as an unexplained missing person. Immediately after the City Hall Annex scene report was completed, the Fort Worth Police Department officially launched an expanded search plan across the downtown area. A temporary task force comprising patrol units, civilian investigators, and forensic technicians was formed, directly commanded by Lieutenant Harlan Reeves. The focus of the sweep was the area surrounding the administrative building, streets leading to the rail lines, and nearby parking lots, where Jack Morales often parked his patrol car before ending his shift. The deployment was systematic, divided into zones by 1 mile radius, with each group responsible for checking specific blocks and routes. On the first morning, a patrol team reported finding a sedan with internal department plates parked on a side road behind the City Hall Annex. The car was in a low-traffic area, but still within public management, where police personnel often parked when working late. Upon inspection, the technical team confirmed it was Jack Morales's vehicle. Doors locked, windshield intact, door handles with no pry marks. Inside, the shift file, police hat, and handheld radio were in their usual places. The driver's seat was adjusted to Jack's height, with no signs of anyone else using it. They found no blood, muddy footprints, or strange items. The gas tank was full. The odometer stopped at a mileage matching the distance from headquarters to here, indicating no additional travel. The investigation team noted the vehicle's position, photographed it, took fingerprint samples, and sealed the area to prevent onlookers. Discovering the car clearly confirmed Jack had returned to the City Hall Annex after leaving the precinct, but did not leave it in his personal vehicle. The surrounding building area was expanded by 2 more blocks for searching. Public trash bins, side paths, and rear lots were all thoroughly checked. The technical team used flashlights and handheld cameras to scan every nook, but found no signs of struggle, dropped items, or personal belongings. Police also contacted the city maintenance department to scan nearby construction sites to ensure no open pits or sewers caused an accident, but results were negative. While the scene team worked, another group handled statements from those who might have been near the area the night Jack vanished. 2 night watchmen at the supplies warehouse next to City Hall confirmed they saw no one entering or exiting from late evening to early morning. A taxi driver said he saw car lights on in the side lot sometime after midnight, but couldn't confirm if anyone was there. Nearby diners and convenience stores were checked for receipts and staff questioned. No one remembered seeing a police officer in uniform or plain clothes that night. Since City Hall was near the Santa Fe freight yard, police coordinated with rail security to check the tracks and waiting cars along the line in case of an accident or sudden attack. Results still showed no abnormalities. Within 3 days of finding the car, the search expanded to the Central Square area, large parking lots, and parks near the Trinity River. Patrol units used tracking dogs to follow scents from Jack's car, but the trail was faint and lost completely at the building's back door, matching the spot where the investigation team noted loose opening and closing. The lack of a continuing direction stalled the search process. Internally, many theories arose. Perhaps Jack left voluntarily or was called out by an acquaintance. However, communication logs showed no calls or messages to his home landline during that time. The investigation agency also sent internal notices to neighboring police departments to check if Jack was detained by mistake, but none reported anything. The initial search results report, nearly 20 pages long, compiled all checked areas, witness lists, and items. The report stated clearly, no evidence indicates the disappearance was crime-related. No witnesses saw Officer Morales leave the City Hall Annex area. The duty vehicle was found intact, with no signs of collision or struggle. Initial sweep results have not yielded new leads. With these findings, the case remained as is, moving to a phase of awaiting additional information. The expanded search order continued for another week, but all subsequent efforts yielded no specific results. Fort Worth PD ended the first search wave unsure of what had really happened to their young officer. While the search results yielded no additional data, the investigation team shifted focus to reviewing Jack Morales's personal relationships. His personnel file at the police department showed no criminal record, no debts, no financial disputes or internal disciplinary issues. Colleagues described him as private, mostly dedicated to work, with little socializing outside the agency. However, in the personal information update section from early that year, he listed a close contact, Elena Soto, a nurse at St. Mary's Hospital, address in the Riverside area, Fort Worth. This caught the investigation team's attention because in informal conversations, a few colleagues had heard Jack mention her in a tense context. They had been briefly engaged and broke up in early spring of the same year, reportedly due to personal conflicts. An old internal report noted that Elena had come to the police station to file for withdrawal of an incomplete civil marriage registration. No violence complaints were filed, but the two were said to have argued multiple times about Jack wanting her to move to a different neighborhood for work convenience, while she refused. The investigation team contacted St. Mary's Hospital to verify Elena's employment information. The hospital confirmed she was working in the inpatient ward, with shifts starting in the afternoon and ending late at night. When asked about the day Jack disappeared, the personnel department noted she was present at the start of her shift, but left 2 hours earlier than required, citing unstable health. The time clock showed she signed out at the end of the evening, a time nearly coinciding with when Jack left headquarters. This information was reported back to Lieutenant Harlan Reeves, who was directly in charge of the case. He immediately decided to summon Elena Soto for questioning as a person of interest. The session took place at Central Police Headquarters, in a cautious atmosphere. Elena arrived in hospital attire, appearing calm. She stated that she and Jack had ended their romantic relationship 2 months prior, had mutually agreed to part ways, and were no longer in contact. When asked about the night Jack vanished, she said that after leaving her shift early, she went home, stayed alone, and had no contact with anyone. Police asked why she left early. She repeated the reason given to the hospital: headache, dizziness. No doctor or staff confirmed she was examined on-site before leaving. Reeves noted this detail in the record and requested she provide evidence for her time at home, such as neighbors or friends who could confirm. Elena said she saw no one and didn't remember what she did during that time. She appeared cooperative, but her detached attitude led investigators to note a lack of emotion appropriate to the situation. While the interrogation was underway, the investigation team collected additional fixed-line telephone data for her. Telephone company records showed no outgoing or incoming calls that evening, except for one short 5-minute call from a public payphone near the hospital, but the caller could not be identified. The investigation team noted this detail and requested a search of public phone booth logs for cross-referencing, but the 1975 storage system only recorded by area, unable to pinpoint exact times. Additionally, while canvassing witnesses at the hospital, one of Elena's colleagues said she seemed tense on the day of the incident. That afternoon, when asked about personal matters, she gave evasive answers and left the break room early. This information was insufficient for conclusions, but was added to the investigation file. Fort Worth PD also checked her personal firearm registration. Records at the registration office showed Elena had legally purchased a .38 caliber Smith & Wesson revolver in 1974 for self-defense. When asked about the weapon, she confirmed she still had it, presented the permit, and allowed inspection. The gun was temporarily sealed for ballistics testing, though at that point, there was no specific charge. Initial examination showed the weapon had not been fired in the past few weeks. The barrel was clean with no residue. However, the ammunition was documented for future comparison. The interrogation report concluded late that afternoon. Lieutenant Reeves noted that although Elena denied any connection to Jack on the night of the incident, her early departure from work, contradictory attitude, and the timing overlap still made her someone who might know something about his disappearance. Per procedure, the investigation team recommended continued monitoring and verification of her statements through nearby witnesses, as well as rechecking the route from St. Mary's Hospital to downtown, to determine if any vehicle or pedestrian movements matched the time frame. At the end of this phase, the case file grew by nearly 30 pages, clearly stating the temporary assessment, personal relationship may be connected to Officer Morales' disappearance. Primary suspect currently lacks direct evidence, but requires close monitoring during the investigation. After the interrogation concluded, Lieutenant Harlan Reeves and 2 authorized investigators conducted a search of Elena Soto's apartment in the Riverside area, south of downtown Fort Worth. This was a quiet residential neighborhood near St. Mary's Hospital, mostly 2-story brick buildings for medical staff and middle-class public employees. Her apartment was on the ground floor, consisting of a small living room, 1 bedroom, and an adjoining kitchen, with no signs of disturbance or forced entry. The search was conducted according to procedure, witnessed by a building representative and an independent observer. Police documented the overall condition: furniture neat, tables and chairs wiped clean, new floor rug, faint paint smell in the air. The living room and hallway walls had been freshly painted cream, the surface smooth, but along the lower wall edges were white chalk streaks not yet wiped away. Reeves instructed the technical team to photograph and scrape paint samples for analysis. The bedroom was tidy. Bed made flat. Blankets and pillows freshly laundered. No scratches or drag marks. The wooden wardrobe contained only nurse uniforms, coats, and a few civilian outfits. No bloodstains or strange fibers. In a small makeup table drawer, they found a matchbox, several partially burned paper scraps, ash mixed with wax, and a pen cap still inked. All were collected into sealed bag 6A, labeled burned paper sample. In the trash bin beside the kitchen sink, the technical team found finer gray ash, along with a few typed document corner pieces. They used tweezers to extract each fragment, preserving shape. Additionally, the bin contained cigarette butts, a paint solvent bottle, and an old rag. The kitchen showed no suspicious signs. Knives clean, cutting board and sink dry. The back door opened to a small path leading to the rear parking lot, lock intact. Police checked the exterior wall. No pry marks or paint runoff. They also found no fresh footprints in the rear cement yard. The search lasted nearly 3 hours. Each room was photographed, preliminarily measured, and documented in the scene report. Besides the paint and ash samples, no other evidence was deemed directly valuable. .38 Smith & Wesson that Elena presented during the prior interrogation had already been sealed separately, so no additional weapons were seized on site. When asked about repainting the walls, Elena said she wanted to refresh the apartment because the old color was too dark, and it had been done about a week before the inspection. She provided a receipt from a nearby hardware store. Reeves noted this explanation, but still requested the paint samples be retained for comparison. All evidence was sealed in 4 separate bags, coded, signed in front of witnesses and the homeowner. The ash and burned paper samples were sent to the Fort Worth PD Forensic Technical Division. At that time, chemical analysis technology was limited. Identification relied mainly on physical observation and manual optical microscopy. The Technical Division's preliminary report noted that the ash could be from administrative-typed paper, but could not determine content or origin. Paint samples from the apartment and the records room wall at City Hall Annex were temporarily stored in glass files for color and composition comparison. The lab could only conclude that both were common industrial wall paint, with no distinct differences to confirm a match. These results prevented the investigation from advancing. Reeves noted in the file, no direct evidence linking to Officer Morales' disappearance found. Residence clean, interior renovations possibly routine, but samples retained for future comparison. Before leaving the apartment, the technical team rechecked the entire floor with ultraviolet light to detect bodily fluids or wipe marks, but no fluorescence was observed. The end-of-day report concluded the apartment was maintained in stable condition, with no direct proof of crime, but the coincidence of Elena's early shift departure and home repairs shortly after the disappearance remained a point to monitor. All samples were sealed and archived, awaiting further analysis with improved technology. With 1975 data, preliminary test results were noted only with a brief line in the file, inconclusive, insufficient basis to confirm physical connection between suspect and disappearance. In an effort to maintain investigation momentum, Fort Worth PD expanded the scope of review after the Elena Soto residence search yielded no breakthrough. Lieutenant Harlan Reeves was tasked with compiling all data from the start and identifying hypothetical directions to explain Officer Jack Morales' disappearance. At an internal unit meeting, 3 main possibilities were proposed: personal revenge, occupational accident during duty, or voluntary departure from the city. Each possibility was assigned to a separate team for verification. The first team reviewed cases Jack had been involved in over the past 6 months, searching for potential retaliation from arrested subjects. The list included a few individuals with direct conflicts, mostly minor offenders, theft, disorderly conduct. All had either completed sentences or were incarcerated, with no signs of travel to Fort Worth at that time. No reports of Jack receiving threats or being followed. Activity records showed he was evaluated as following procedure, with no abuse of power or involvement in serious investigations. The revenge possibility was ruled out. The second team handled the occupational accident hypothesis. Police swept the entire night patrol route, bridges, riverside areas, construction sites, and underground storage near downtown. No scenes recorded accidents or evidence potentially related. No hospitals admitted unidentified male patients matching the description. Jack's complete disappearance without physical traces quickly deadlocked this direction. The third team checked the possibility of voluntary job abandonment. The Internal Finance Office confirmed Jack received regular pay. Bank accounts showed no large withdrawals or unusual transfers. At the bank where he saved, staff said he transacted regularly with no unusual behavior before vanishing. Personal mail and bills in his apartment showed timely rent, utility, and vehicle registration payments. Personnel verified administrative records, no leave requests, transfer applications, or duty release reports. Consistent financial and administrative evidence eliminated voluntary departure. As main hypotheses narrowed, Reeves ordered the forensic technical team to re-examine the records room scene to ensure no details were missed. The supplemental technical report was completed by late August 1975. The lead technician noted one noteworthy point: the wall behind Jack's desk had newer paint than the rest, with a smoother, lighter surface. This paint matched the industrial type commonly used for minor building repairs, but no repair records existed for that period. The maintenance supervisor, when questioned, said he didn't recall any wall replastering requests. However, due to no signs of struggle or damage, this detail was classified as not directly related and briefly noted at the report's end. Concurrent with technical review, police re-verified Elena's background. They checked residence history, acquaintances, and colleagues. No one confirmed violent behavior or heard her mention Jack post-breakup. Many described her as reserved, quiet, mostly work-focused. The lack of clear motive weakened the hypothesis of her involvement. Reeves tried to find additional witnesses who might have seen Jack or his vehicle that night. Police distributed flyers with photos and detailed descriptions to neighborhoods around downtown, but no reliable responses. A few anonymous calls claimed seeing a uniformed officer at the North Main rail stop, but times and details didn't match. All were filed as unverified tips. With no new investigative leads, Fort Worth PD temporarily kept the file open, awaiting clues. Lieutenant Reeves wrote in the late September summary, "No financial communication or activity signs indicating Morales intended to abandon duty. No evidence confirming accident or criminal act. Current suspicions remain hypothetical, unprovable." The absence of direct witnesses, specific physical evidence, and primitive forensic technology caused the Morales file to gradually stall. 3 months after the day Officer Jack Morales was reported missing, the Fort Worth Police Department completed the first official phase of the investigation. The task forces successively submitted compiled reports on every line of inquiry they had pursued. All reached the same conclusion: no physical evidence, no direct witnesses, and no traces indicating whether Morales was alive or dead. The hypotheses raised, from voluntarily leaving the city to the possibility of an attack, all lacked substantiating proof. The technical, administrative, personnel, and financial units had cross-referenced data, but still found no event that could help determine the cause of the incident. The final report, nearly 80 pages long, documented all investigative activities, from inspecting the scene at the City Hall Annex, seizing evidence, interrogating suspects, to analyzing preliminary forensic results. Each section ended with a repeated assessment: insufficient basis to conclude. Elena Soto, who had once been considered the prime suspect, was summoned one more time to reconfirm her statement. This time, she brought her personal attorney and reaffirmed everything she had said before. No new evidence emerged against her, and the forensic examination of items seized from her apartment showed no signs of criminal activity. The Tarrant County Prosecutor's Office reviewed the file and concluded that prosecution was impossible due to the lack of direct incriminating elements. The temporary surveillance order on Elena was lifted, and she was informed that she no longer had any obligation to report periodically. Nevertheless, her name remained in the file as a person of interest. Lieutenant Harlan Reeves submitted a summary report in which he detailed the case's developments and the points that could not be explained. He stated clearly that there had been no internal misconduct in the investigative process, but the shortage of technical resources, particularly in trace analysis and evidence examination, had caused the entire case to stall. At that time, the Fort Worth PD did not have a DNA storage system or an electronic fingerprint database. The paint, paper ash, and dust samples were preserved according to storage standards, but could not be analyzed further. The preliminary results were printed in hard copy and filed with the main case records. In early November 1975, an administrative meeting of the department was convened to decide the case's status. The division commanders all agreed that every reasonable line of inquiry had been pursued. No new witnesses had emerged, and area searches had concluded without results. Maintaining an active investigation no longer had legal or personnel basis. The police chief at the time, Leonard Hayes, signed an internal memo ending active search operations and transferring the file to missing person, cause undetermined status. The memo was distributed to all units, and a summary was simultaneously sent to local media. The Fort Worth Press ran a brief article, "Fort Worth Police Department closes search for Officer Morales after 3 months of fruitless investigation." At the same time, the original documents, interrogation transcripts, scene photographs, and seized evidence were transferred to storage in the basement of the City Hall Annex, the very place where Jack Morales had worked before disappearing. All evidence was sealed in wooden crates, labeled with seals reading FWPD 1975. Morales' file, along with an inventory including paint samples, paper ash, floor carpet section, photographs of wall scratches, and several technical reports. The case management system at the time relied on paper codes, with each case handwritten in the Register of Missing Persons. The Morales entry was numbered 241/75, with a brief note, "No results, suspected voluntary or involuntary disappearance." After the file was handed over, the Personnel Department completed the administrative procedures for a long-term missing person case. Jack's salary was withheld for 3 months and then stopped, and his personal belongings at the station were transferred to his family per regulations. Chief Hayes sent a condolence letter to the relatives expressing that the department would continue to remember Officer Morales's contributions. The family still believed he was alive, but the lack of evidence prevented them from requesting a declaration of death. Within the department, the case quickly became a sensitive topic. Many young officers saw it as a reminder of occupational risks, while veterans viewed it as a rare, inexplicable incident. Lieutenant Reeves, the lead investigator, was required to submit all personal notes and hand the case over to the archives. Before closing the file, he added a handwritten line in the duty log, "No clear resolution. Reconsider if new technology or data emerges." That note became the final line in the document set before it was sealed. By the end of November, the administrative process was complete. The Morales case was officially listed in the closed pending new evidence category, temporarily closed, awaiting new evidence. For the police apparatus of that era, this was the final conclusion possible. The city held no further meetings on the matter. The press release, just over 200 words long, marked the end of the initial investigative phase. After 3 months of investigation without progress, the Fort Worth Police Department determines Officer Jack Morales's case to be a disappearance of undetermined cause. No evidence indicates criminal activity or voluntary abandonment of duty. The file is archived and will be revisited upon new information. With that brief release, All efforts throughout the summer of 1975 closed in silence, leaving an incomplete file buried deep in the storage of the very building where the young officer had once worked and where his name gradually faded into the list of the permanently missing. In the years following the closure of Officer Jack Morales's disappearance, the City Hall Annex continued to be used as a secondary office for small administrative departments of the city of Fort Worth. The ground floor was dedicated to civil registry offices and financial document storage, while the basement, formerly the police records room, became a holding area for backlog files. In the 1980s, with the expansion of the administrative system, many new facilities were built, and the City Hall Annex was gradually seen as an outdated facility, no longer suitable for modernization needs. Damp walls, deteriorating electrical wiring, rooms rarely used. At this point, the Morales file was in the missing officer group, a small category recording cases of officers who disappeared, died, or left duty under undetermined circumstances. Per regulations, this group of files was only reviewed upon new data or requests from state-level agencies. No requests were received for many years. From 1981 to 1990, the City Hall Annex had only a few part-time staff. Most basement rooms were permanently locked due to lack of ventilation. Some old wooden file cabinets were pushed to the end of the hallway, stacked on top of each other. The Morales file, code 241/75, was in the third drawer of the middle metal cabinet, along with hundreds of other old cases. Periodic inventory reports only confirmed file intact, with no additional notes. When the city changed leadership in the early 1990s, the entire building was transferred to the Department of Construction for material storage, turning the ground floor into a warehouse area and completely closing the basement. The 1992 administrative record stated clearly, no operational value, but retained files per historical regulations. From then on, no one opened the old file cabinets. As for those involved, their lives took different turns. Lieutenant Harlan Reeves retired in 1984, taking a copy of the final Morales report in his personal files. He left Fort Worth and moved to the suburbs of Austin. Elena Soto, after no longer being under police surveillance, submitted her resignation from St. Mary's Hospital at the end of 1976. She sold her apartment in Riverside, moved to El Paso for a short time, then settled in California, where she had relatives. According to administrative records, she applied for a job at a small community health facility in Fresno and never returned to Texas. Her departure was not obstructed, as there was no legal reason to detain her. In internal bulletins, her name was no longer mentioned. In the 1980s, as more serious crimes dominated media attention, the story of Jack Morales only appeared fleetingly in a few commemorative articles about the history of the Fort Worth police force. A small photo of him was once displayed in the second-floor hallway of the main headquarters, alongside officers who died in the line of duty. The caption below simply read, "Missing while serving, 1975. No memorial service, no official anniversary." Gradually, those who had worked with Jack transferred or retired, making the case a fading memory. The city's file storage system during this period was still primarily paper-based. In 1989, the Fort Worth PD began gradually transferring data to microfilm storage. However, only files marked active or unsolved with potential for reactivation were digitized. The Morales file, assessed as no potential for reopening, was overlooked. The old transcripts and evidence collected from the 1975 scene continued to sit untouched in the wooden crates. Low humidity storage conditions caused many documents to fade, ink to blur, and seals to peel. In the early 2000s, when the city conducted an inventory of administrative assets, the City Hall Annex was listed as a structure in the category awaiting demolition. A portion of the basement was sealed off to prevent subsidence. In the 2003 safety inspection report, the structural engineer noted that the area was damp, unventilated, containing many old materials, and recommended avoiding access unless necessary. The Morales case was mentioned only once in an inventory report, merely as a file code in the historical retention list. In Fort Worth, the memory of the disappearance had almost vanished from the community's collective awareness. New generations of police officers joining the force only knew of the case through internal training catalogs under the section Unresolved Situations. Residents who had followed the incident at the time were now elderly or had moved elsewhere. Local media no longer mentioned it, as there were no new developments related to it. The Morales family, after years of fruitless waiting, relocated to Houston. Jack's mother passed away in 1988, never knowing what truly happened to her son. By the late 2000s, the City Hall Annex was almost completely abandoned. Only the ground floor was used as temporary storage for the city's archiving department, while the basement had been locked for years, covered in dust and cobwebs. Hundreds of old files, including the Morales case, remained untouched in rusty metal cabinets, alongside sealed boxes with faded labels. No one remembered the exact location of that file in the storage system. The disappearance that had once drawn attention was now just a minor entry in old logbooks, a case no one mentioned anymore, buried among yellowed pages, as Fort Worth entered a new era of development and gradually forgot the story of the young officer who vanished without a trace in the heart of the city. In early 2011, the Fort Worth Police Department began implementing an investigative reform program, which included plans to establish a unit dedicated to long-pending cases, commonly known as the Cold Case Unit. The unit's goal was to review unresolved files, applying modern forensic techniques to explore possibilities for reinvestigation. The formation of the Cold Case Unit was driven by two factors: advancements in DNA technology and the state of Texas's requirements to re-examine missing persons cases involving public servants. The department's command decided to start with cases that had clear elements, preserved evidence, and especially those involving internal department matters. The initial list included 58 files from the 1960s, 1980s, most of which were disappearances, unsolved homicides, or cases of public servants presumed to have abandoned duty but unverified. Among them, the Jack Morales file, 241/75, was highlighted early due to its unique aspects. The victim was a police officer. The incident occurred in the city's administrative complex, and the sealed evidence at the facility was still under Fort Worth PD management. Heading the Cold Case Unit was Detective Harold Mendez, a veteran officer with over 30 years of investigative experience. He had participated in many major cases in North Texas before temporarily retiring in 2008, after which he was invited back as a consultant for the new program. With his knowledge of old files and meticulous analytical skills, Mendez was seen as the ideal person to handle complex cases lacking physical evidence. In the unit's first meeting, he requested a detailed catalog of files with feasible recovery potential. The Morales file was quickly identified as one with excellent storage conditions. It had seen reports, sealed evidence, and samples recorded in the old storage inventory system. Under the new regulations, each cold case file had to be screened for evidence condition, legal value, and compatibility with current biological data matching. Mendez and two younger associates began inventorying at the basement storage of the City Hall Annex, which was temporarily reopened for the program. While flipping through the catalog, they found the entry FWPD 1975 Morales file in the missing officer group list. Although most documents had yellowed, the seal labels were intact, and the file number matched the 1975 administrative copy. For Mendez, this was not just an inconclusive case, but a part of the Fort Worth Police Department's own history, where an officer vanished right in the city's administrative building without any explanation. The Cold Case Unit operated under a three-step process, evaluating original files, identifying usable evidence, and proposing additional analysis methods. In an internal meeting at the end of Q1/2011, Mendez presented that the Morales case met all criteria. He proposed selecting it as one of the program's 5 initial files, citing symbolic value and the potential existence of physical evidence. The department command approved the proposal and granted the Cold Case Unit full access to the old storage. At that time, the public was almost unaware of the Morales case's existence. Information about the new program was only briefly announced in an internal bulletin, stating that Fort Worth PD is reviewing certain unresolved cases to apply modern forensic techniques. After more than 3 decades of being forgotten, the name Jack Morales was officially mentioned for the first time in a Fort Worth Police Department administrative record. Selecting his file as a test case for the cold case program was not just operational, but also an act of restoring the department's historical accountability to a colleague who disappeared while on duty. As the review process began, the old metal file cabinets in the City Hall Annex basement were unsealed, and the documents coded 241/75 were brought to light for the first time in 36 years, marking the start of a phase to re-examine the disappearance that Fort Worth PD had once considered permanently closed. While the Fort Worth PD's cold case program began its review, the city simultaneously launched a renovation project for the old administrative area, including the City Hall Annex, a structure abandoned for nearly 2 decades. The building's basement, formerly police file storage and later closed due to dampness and mold, was added to the structural inspection list before deciding on repairs. During a construction team survey, a group of workers discovered anomalies in the north wall of the basement corridor. When lightly tapping the surface, the sound was hollow and echoed differently from the other wall sections. The cement layer was newer and smoother, not matching the building's original materials. They assumed it might be a section sealed during previous repairs, but no technical drawings were on file. The discovery was reported to the police department since the basement fell under Fort Worth PD's old evidence management. Upon hearing the report, Detective Harold Mendez immediately contacted the construction supervision team and requested permission for a detailed inspection of the area. With years of experience handling old scenes, he noted a striking coincidence. The north basement wall was the location described in the 1975 Morales report, where fresh paint and plastering of unknown reason had been noted. Mendez decided to observe in person. The survey day was scheduled for the following week, with participation from the cold case unit, city structural engineers, and evidence room representatives. Upon opening the basement door, the dark, damp space with a heavy smell of rotting paper required the investigation team to wear protective masks. The old fluorescent lights still glowed faintly, dimly illuminating rows of rusty metal cabinets and dusty wooden crates. The engineer in charge tapped the suspect wall surface. The echo was clear, indicating hollowness inside. Preliminary measurements revealed the area was about 20 inches thick, while the building's original design was only 14 inches. A portion of the wall had small cracks running vertically from ceiling to floor, appearing uniform like construction joints rather than natural cracks. The engineers confirmed this cement layer was added after the initial construction. Mendez requested the team document the scene with technical photos and compare it to the building's old drawings held by the Public Works Department. The 1930 design showed no technical voids or hollow columns in the north basement wall. The presence of a large gap between 2 wall layers was abnormal. He immediately reported the discovery to superiors, proposing to halt construction in that section for the cold case unit to conduct forensic examination. The proposal was approved the same day since the area had been locked for years and did not affect current administrative operations. During the official inspection, the Fort Worth PD forensic team brought wall thickness measurement equipment using ultrasound and a ground-penetrating radar scanner borrowed from the City Infrastructure Department. The scan results clearly showed a low-density material region in the center of the suspect wall, measuring about 1.2 x 0.8 meters. The radar images also displayed small metal reflection points, possibly hard objects or a metal box inside. This data particularly caught Mendez's attention. He reminded the technical team of the 1975 file detail. The technician had noted fresh paint in this exact spot, but deemed it unrelated. To ensure procedure, the cold case unit drafted a temporary seal for the area, sealed the basement door, and posted examination area signs. All subsequent wall opening steps had to be filmed with legal representatives present. Mendez cautiously avoided assumptions, but noted in his internal report that this was the first physical detail that could lead to tangible evidence in the Morales disappearance. 2 days later, once full administrative procedures were approved, the official opening inspection proceeded. A section of wall, about 3 square feet, was carefully chiseled. The outer cement layer was only about 2 inches thick. Inside were broken old bricks and a pitch-black void. A strong, musty smell emerged as soon as the bricks were removed. The technical team shone flashlights inside and saw a reflective object deep in the wall cavity. It was a metal object, box-shaped, medium-sized, covered in thick dust. The structural engineer confirmed this was not a building component. Mendez ordered a halt to all mechanical operations, requiring specialized tools to extract the object from the wall cavity without damaging the structure. After nearly an hour of manipulation, the box was brought to light. It was a tin-plated iron box with a faded seal label, FWPD evidence. Though the stamp had faded, the text was still recognizable. The box edges were rusted, the lid slightly deformed. The group fell silent for a few seconds, realizing the potential significance of the discovery in the plastered-shut wall cavity of the very building where the disappearance occurred. There existed a sealed police evidence item from Fort Worth decades earlier. The iron box was immediately placed in a large evidence bag, sealed and temporarily coded Annex 2000-1101. Mendez signed the seizure report, noting the time, personnel, and exact position by drawing coordinates. He made no judgments in the public report, only a brief line, discovery of questionable sealed evidence, position matching the area, noted in the 1975 Morales file. After collection, the technical team secured the area with a safety panel, leaving it intact for future additional analysis. At the end of the workday, the City Hall Annex basement returned to silence. Under the faint yellow light, Mendez paused for a few seconds before the chiseled wall section, looking at the mix of old and new cement on the surface. It was the spot once deemed unrelated, but now the starting point for an investigation reopened after more than 30 years. Immediately after the iron box was removed from the City Hall Annex basement wall cavity, the cold case unit proceeded to unseal it under strictly controlled conditions at the Fort Worth Police Department's technical room. The process was witnessed by forensic representatives, evidence management, and structural engineers to ensure legality. The box lid was rusted and slightly deformed, but the lock remained intact, with a faint imprint on the surface, FWPD evidence, 1975. When the seal was opened, a distinct smell of old metal and damp paper rose, indicating the object had been in a sealed, damp environment for many years. Inside, the evidence was wrapped in yellowed waxed cloth. Items were removed and recorded sequentially: a Fort Worth police badge, number 3172, a Timex metal wristwatch with slightly cracked glass, a fired .38 caliber bullet with intact brass casing, a paper envelope with dark blood stains at the corner, and a small folded handwritten note with JM initials in blue ink at the bottom corner. There were no clear signs of other documents. Mendez immediately requested photographing, measuring, and numbering each evidence item. The badge was confirmed as Officer Jack Morales's, based on the 1975 personnel file, clearly listing number 3172. The Timex watch matched the description in the report listing personal property collected from Jack's desk. At that time, the personal watch entry was not found. .38 caliber bullet drew attention, as it was the same type as the Smith & Wesson revolver owned by Elena Soto per weapon registration records. The paper envelope had faded text, its edge stuck dry with old blood, unreadable inside without destroying the sample. Mendez decided to reseal it intact for transfer to a specialized lab. The handwritten note had 2 short lines in scribbled but clear handwriting. "Don't come here again, JM." The group remained silent for a few minutes upon reading the note, fully aware of its potential value to the case. The evidence opening report was signed on site with full-time personnel and detailed descriptions. Mendez had everything resealed, placed in a specialized plastic box, labeled with cold case unit tape, and coded FWPD 2011 R1. He requested immediate transport of the evidence to the Texas Department of Public Safety lab in Austin, which had the state's most advanced DNA and fingerprint facilities. Included were copies of the original 1975 unsealing report, badge comparison documents, and descriptions of Jack Morales's personal items. Before shipping, Mendez reviewed the old file once more for information matching. In the 1975 scene report, there was no mention of discovering similar evidence in the file room or basement area. This meant the items were either not recorded in the initial investigation or hidden before the then force conducted checks. The box being sealed with FWPD evidence made the situation even more unusual, as there was no 1975 order to establish such evidence for the Morales case. Mendez noted in his personal notebook, "If this is a department-sealed box, why was it hidden in the wall instead of handed over for storage? And who had access to the basement at that time?" The technical team continued checking the opened wall cavity to ensure no other objects. They scanned with radar again, finding only brick fragments and old cement, no additional metal reflections. Mendez ordered the area resealed with warning signs to preserve the scene. That same day, he completed a report to the Fort Worth police chief, proposing to restart the Morales file under reinvestigation procedure. In the report, he stated, "New evidence discovery directly linked to the missing officer and related individuals noted in the original file. Recommend reopening investigation to determine origin, authenticity, and forensic value of the evidence." The proposal file was approved within 24 hours. The legal department immediately reactivated case code FWPD 75 in Moral, changing status to reopened investigation. All old documents were digitized and stored in the internal cold case system to prevent loss. Mendez received the official decision to lead the Morales reinvestigation, with full access to DPS's new databases. The next day, the evidence was transported by specialized vehicle to the Austin lab under supervision by 2 forensic staff. The transport report noted stable preservation conditions, temperature maintained at 18 degrees C to avoid DNA sample damage. DPS received it in a report confirming all items, 1 Fort Worth Police badge number 3172, 2 Timex metal watch, 3 .38 brass caliber bullet, 4 paper envelope with blood marks, 5 handwritten note with JM signature. All were transferred to separate testing sections, metal items to fingerprint tracing, envelope and note to biological analysis. Upon completing handover procedures, Fort Worth PD officially sent an internal bulletin to state agencies confirming the restart of investigation into the 1975 disappearance of Officer Jack Morales. This was the first time in over 30 years his name was recorded back in the active case list. In the initial summary report, Mendez concluded, newly discovered evidence has potential to establish direct links between the victim and another individual within the case scope. Analysis of biological, chemical, and mechanical samples from the sealed box will be the basis for determining the next investigative direction. That night, as Mendez finalized the day's last report, he numbered the file, FWPD 2011 R1A, code for the official reinvestigation phase. The final note in his report was just 4 words, "Case officially reopened today." The Morales case, once forgotten in Fort Worth's dusty old basement for nearly 4 decades, was now officially restarted in Texas's modern investigative system. The Texas Department of Public Safety lab in Austin took nearly 2 months to complete analysis of the evidence recovered from the iron box found in the City Hall Annex basement wall. The samples had been in sealed damp conditions for over 30 years, making DNA extraction and trace recovery challenging. However, With modern techniques like fluorescence spectroscopy and polymerase chain reaction, the forensic experts successfully recovered genetic data from the dried blood on the envelope and epithelial cells on the police badge. The official results were sent to Fort Worth PD at the end of Q3 2011, comprising 3 parts: biological identification, mechanical identification, and weapons identification. According to the biological report, the blood sample collected on the envelope coded Exhibit 4A had genetic characteristics of female gender, blood type O, with DNA markers matching 16 out of 16 comparison points with data stored in the Texas State Criminal System. The reference file matched completely with Elena Soto's DNA sample, stored from a 1999 civil assault case when she was injured, and had a medical sample taken in Fresno, California. Her DNA had been entered into the federal CODIS database per automatic regulations. The lab clearly noted, no possibility of random match level is 1 in 10 billion. The report concluded that the blood on the envelope could not belong to Jack Morales, but came from a woman whose genetic profile matched Elena Soto. The second part of the biological identification results focused on the trace skin sample adhering to the surface of police badge number 3172. After multiple processing rounds, experts extracted complete male DNA, matching Jack Morales's reference profile in the Fort Worth PD personnel storage. Genetic markers and physical characteristics, such as blood type and cellular phenotype, were all consistent. The accompanying description in the report stated, the DNA sample likely originated from sweat or direct hand-skin contact, proving that this badge was in use by Officer Morales at the time it was placed in the box. This result eliminated any doubt about the evidence box being fabricated. Both the badge and watch in the box were confirmed to originate from Jack personally. The mechanical and weapons analysis was conducted by the DPS Ballistics Department. .38 caliber bullet coded Exhibit 3A was measured for dimensions, matched for rifling grooves and twist marks on the surface. The conclusion stated that the characteristic twist corresponded to the barrel type of the Smith & Wesson Model 36, a common revolver in the 1970s. Notably, Elena Soto had registered ownership of this gun type in 1974, serial number 4, J2106, in Fort Worth. The ballistics lab compared the recovered bullet with stored data on her gun in the licensing file and confirmed near-perfect parameter matches, 5 grooves, right-hand twist, 16-degree angle. The report concluded, the bullet has a very high probability of being fired from a Smith & Wesson Model 36 or equivalent model. Results are consistent with the type of gun registered to Elena Soto. In addition to the 3 main evidence items, DPS also analyzed the paper fragment with the JM signature. The paper was stained and deteriorated, but the ballpoint ink still retained its characteristic light blue color. Chemical analysis showed the ink contained methylene blue components commonly used in 1970s pens. The handwriting sample was compared with administrative documents bearing Jack Morales's authentic signature, including patrol reports and personal logs. The handwriting identification report affirmed over 90% matching stroke characteristics, particularly the downward curve of the J and the upward ending stroke of the M. Preliminary conclusion: highly likely that the paper fragment was written by Jack Morales himself. When compiled, these results created a major turning point in the investigation team's assessment. For the first time in over 30 years, Jack Morales's disappearance had scientifically authenticated evidence showing the presence of both the victim and Elena Soto at the same location during the time frame corresponding to the 1975 incident. The DPS summary attached stated, based on biological data, the female blood sample and male DNA found in the same evidence item indicate the possibility of direct contact between the 2 individuals before or at the time of the event. The Timex watch in the iron box was also examined separately. The mechanical department found the watch stopped at 22:14, with the minute hand offset by 2 degrees and signs of moisture ingress. Although accuracy could not be confirmed, Experts believe this time corresponded to the period Jack was recorded, leaving police headquarters on the night of his disappearance. Further analysis revealed a slight dent on the back of the watch, resembling impact with a hard object. This mark was magnified and compared with the 1975 file room wall scratch description report, potentially matching in size, suggesting a strong impact at the scene. Upon receiving all results from Austin, Mendez organized an emergency cold case unit meeting. The compiled report was presented to Fort Worth PD leadership within 2 hours. The key data points were clearly listed. 1. Female DNA in the envelope matches Elena Soto. 2. Male DNA on the badge belongs to Jack Morales. 3. Bullet matches Smith & Wesson .38 type, the weapon Elena owned. 4. Handwritten note highly likely written by Jack Morales himself. 5. Evidence hidden in the wall of the building where the disappearance occurred. Each result was presented by Mendez, according to forensic standards, without speculation, only noting direct correlations. However, he emphasized in his oral conclusion, the Morales case is no longer a simple missing person. We are looking at a concealed crime scene. This assessment was noted in the meeting minutes and forwarded to command to prepare next steps under criminal unsolved case legal procedures. With DNA matching between the victim and the former primary suspect, along with physical evidence of the weapon and handwriting, the entire Morales file was upgraded from reinvestigation to active criminal investigation. In less than a year since discovering the iron box in the wall, Fort Worth PD possessed a highly convincing chain of forensic data, sufficient to shift the case from historical status to active investigation. This identification result marked the most important turning point since the cold case unit's establishment. The seemingly disconnected data, bloodstain, badge, bullet, brief signed note, now linked into a unified chain of evidence, opening an entirely new approach to the case forgotten for nearly 40 years. After receiving all forensic identification results from Texas DPS, Detective Harold Mendez decided to focus on cross-referencing new data with the original 1975 file to find specific links between the evidence and the scene. He believed an overlooked detail might exist in the old documents, especially since current identification results showed the iron box was hidden in the wall, matching the location described as having fresh paint in the initial technical report. Mendez requested the Central Archives Department to hand over all paper files related to case FWPD 24175, Morales, Jack, including handwritten notes, investigation reports, scene photos, and notes from Lieutenant Harlan Reeves, the lead at the time. The original file was found in a sealed document box stored since 1976 in the department's old North Side warehouse. The documents had yellowed, some pages faded, but still readable. Mendez spent many days reorganizing all materials chronologically, numbering each report and scene photo. Among the nearly 200-page thick file, he discovered a supplemental scene technical report, dated August 12, 1975, signed by technician Carter W. Haynes. This document included 4 black and white photos printed on silver gelatin photo paper, capturing angles inside the City Hall Annex basement file room. One photo drew special attention, the north wall corner with a light-colored paint layer, still wet, with light reflecting on the surface. Haynes's handwritten note under the photo, wall section freshly painted, maintenance reason undetermined, possibly routine repair. Mendez compared the position in the photo with the current basement scene map. Based on the distance between 2 load-bearing columns and the side door, he precisely confirmed it was the area where the cold case team discovered and opened the iron box in 2011. This match was considered important, indirect evidence proving the wall was repaired within the time Jack Morales disappeared. He immediately photocopied all photos and the report, sent them to the digital technical room for restoration and contrast enhancement to compare with new radar images taken when opening the wall. In Harlan Reeves's 1975 Investigation Command report, Mendez also found a margin note never previously cited in public files. The faint pencil line, signs of wall, repainting the night after disappearance. No repair permit from Public Works. Below that, Reeves underlined, no permit, and added a small question mark. However, this note was not in the official narrative, seemingly just his personal reminder. In administrative records, there was no evidence Reeves ever requested investigation of the wall repair. Mendez sought to contact anyone still alive who worked under Reeves at the time. After multiple searches, he found Frank Haynes, brother of technician Carter Haynes, now living in Amarillo. Frank confirmed his brother died in 1989, but had mentioned something strange about the wall being repainted overnight in the Morales case. According to Frank, Carter said he was told to stop inspecting the wall section because it was not within necessary scope, which surprised him since 1970s technical rules required recording any new paint or structural changes. This indirect account, though without legal value, reinforced Mendez's view that someone deliberately concealed a specific area in the file room right after Morales disappeared. For verification, Mendez requested the City Infrastructure Department to retrieve the 1975 maintenance log. Construction records at the Public Works office showed no approved requests for painting or plastering the City Hall Annex from June to September that year. The most recent maintenance report was April 1975, with the next recorded only in 1976. This confirmed the fresh paint in the photo could not be routine city maintenance. These evidences were compiled by Mendez in a 27-page report to the Fort Worth PD director. In the conclusion he wrote, 1975 scene photos show the north file room wall was repainted within 24-48 hours after the disappearance. That position matches where the sealed iron box was discovered in 2011. No administrative records confirm repair activity. Based on this data, it can be determined that the painting and plastering were done outside procedure, very likely to conceal an object. Mendez's report also analyzed the likelihood of the person performing this having basement access the night of the disappearance. He listed personnel with area key access, 7 people, 4 on-duty officers, 2 administrative technicians, and 1 non-staff employee permitted to work in the building. That was Elena Soto. Issued a temporary access badge to support the police medical records program in 1975. Her name appearing on this list was marked in red by Mendez in his personal copy. Cross-referencing all data, fresh paint images, iron box discovery position, and area access data, Mendez concluded the wall where the box was found was definitely repaired during the disappearance time frame. No administrative reason explained it, and the only person with unofficial basement access beyond on-duty officers was Elena Soto. All recovered documents, including original photos, technical reports, and Reeves's notes, were scanned by Mendez, digitally backed up, and entered into the cold case system under code Annex Wall, Original Record. This discovery and confirmation not only strengthened the link between evidence and scene, but also closed the decades-long question about the origin of the paint once deemed unimportant. At this point, Fort Worth PD had historical evidence confirming the wall, where the iron box was found, was the product of a repair action performed exactly when Jack Morales disappeared in 1975, providing a solid foundation for the next investigative direction. After confirming the match between the 1975 file room wall photos and the iron box discovery position, Detective Harold Mendez opened the next investigation phase, tracking individuals who worked or were present at the City Hall Annex during Jack Morales' disappearance. His goal was to reconstruct building activity in the first 3 days after the incident, particularly verifying who had basement access and who might have participated in repainting the wall. The cold case team began by searching old Fort Worth PD and city administrative personnel records. Due to the long time past, many on the list had retired or died. After nearly a month of screening, the investigation identified 12 still living individuals who worked in the building in 1975, including 3 officers, 2 maintenance engineers, 4 office staff, and 3 civilian guards from the private security company handling night shifts. All were invited for voluntary interviews at police headquarters or via video call if distant. The first Mendez met was Walt Grady, then a night guard for Texas Guard Service, now 82, living in Denton. In the interview, Walt clearly remembered the July 1975 night because he noted noise incident in his shift log, but was told by superiors to remove it from the report. He recounted that after 10 p.m., while patrolling the ground floor corridor, he heard 2 consecutive heavy thuds echoing from the basement, like something heavy hitting the wall. He went down to check, but found the basement door locked from inside, lights still on. When reporting via radio to the supervisor, he was told to return to position and no need to log the incident since police were working in the area. Walt recounted slowly, "At the time I thought they were moving something, but now looking back, I wish I had insisted on recording it." Mendez recorded this statement, had him sign confirmation, and added it to the cold case file. Next, the team located Thomas K. Barlow, maintenance engineer from the City Infrastructure Department, responsible for City Hall Annex upkeep from 1974-1976. Barlow now lives in Tyler, Texas. When asked about wall painting repairs, he flipped through an old notebook he still kept from his working days. In the entry dated July 16, 1975, he briefly wrote, "Received request to repair basement plaster, completed." Barlow explained that when he arrived that morning, the painting was nearly done. He was only tasked with structural checks and clearing remaining brick debris. "I clearly remember the person working before me was a woman, petite, wearing a light-colored jacket. She had a temporary access badge, said it was issued by the police office," he said. When Mendez asked if he knew the name, Barlow said he didn't remember, but believed it started with E. This information prompted the team to immediately recheck the 1975 temporary access badge list stored in administrative archives. In that list, only one woman with a name starting with E was issued basement access during that period. Elena Soto, St. Mary's Hospital nurse, issued the badge for the Police Medical Records Project. Barlow's statement was considered the second critical link. Mendez had the handwritten A. Soto in the original badge list compared with her signature in the same year weapon registration file, confirming a match. A separate report was drafted and sent to Fort Worth PD's legal department to verify witness evidence value. Not stopping there, Mendez also met 2 administrative staff who worked on the City Hall Annex ground floor at the time, Linda Carver and Deborah Penn, then finance office secretaries. Both confirmed that the morning after the disappearance, they were notified the basement was temporarily under repair and prohibited from entering for 2 days. Linda Carver remembered seeing a strange woman carrying painting tools leaving the building with a small unmarked truck. When asked for details, she described the woman as about 30, black hair tied back, wearing a white blouse like a nurse's. She affirmed never seeing that person in the building before. Deborah Penn also confirmed hearing hammer or heavy object sounds on the floor that morning, but didn't know why. To reinforce the statements, Mendez retrieved maintenance contract records between the city and contractors in July 1975. No contracts related to basement painting were signed. This meant the wall repainting was not part of official plans, further supporting witness accounts of the unusual woman's presence in the area. In the summary report to the director, Mendez outlined, one guard Walt Grady confirmed hearing heavy noises the night of the disappearance and was told not to log it. 2 engineer Thomas Barlow affirmed the wall worker was a woman with a police temporary badge, name starting with E. 3 administrative records prove only Elena Soto was issued such a badge at that time. 2 office staff confirmed basement access restrictions immediately after, and saw a strange woman with painting tools. All statements were audio recorded, documented, and cross-referenced with old stored data. Mendez noted in the conclusion, independent witnesses, unconnected to each other, all provided matching information on timing and the presence of a woman with a temporary badge in the basement area the night and morning immediately after Officer Morales disappeared. These details are compatible with evidence data and administrative records, strengthening the likelihood that concealment of the object was performed right after the incident. With this chain of statements, the cold case unit for the first time had direct witness evidence supporting prior forensic results. Mendez completed a final 32-page report, signed it, and sent it to the Tarrant County Prosecutor's Office to consider next investigative steps, bringing the Morales case back to the center of Fort Worth PD attention after nearly 40 years of being forgotten. As forensic evidence and witness statements all pointed to the same conclusion, Detective Harold Mendez opened an out-of-state investigation phase to determine the current location of Elena Soto, the woman who was the primary suspect in the Morales file nearly 4 decades earlier. According to civil data, Elena still used her real name, currently residing in Fresno, California, where she worked part-time for a private clinic in Madera County. Immigration and tax records showed she had never legally changed her name, had a stable address, no new criminal record, and lived alone after early retirement from nursing. This information was verified through federal systems and medical databases, enabling the team to easily pinpoint her specific address in a quiet North Fresno residential area. Mendez coordinated with the Fresno County Sheriff's Office and Tarrant County prosecutors to obtain a warrant for a witness interview at her residence. On February 8, 2012, a 3-officer Texas task force was dispatched to California, carrying copies of the Morales file, DNA identification results, and witness reports. The session was conducted at the Fresno County Sheriff's Office, with local legal representatives present to ensure compliance with federal procedures for an out-of-state agency investigation. Upon notification, Elena Soto agreed to cooperate and appeared on time. In her 60s, she was petite, with silver hair and a calm demeanor. The interview lasted nearly 3 hours, fully audio and video recorded. Mendez began with basic questions about her past work in Fort Worth. Elena confirmed working at St. Mary's Hospital and knowing Jack Morales, but insisted they only maintained a work relationship and ended completely after 1975. When asked about the specific time of his disappearance, she vaguely replied, "Don't remember clearly, only knowing heard others in the hospital gossiping." Mendez presented information about her temporary access badge for the police medical records program. Elena appeared momentarily flustered but said that was just technical permission to transfer medical files and denied ever entering the City Hall annex basement. However, this statement immediately contradicted administrative data showing she was the only person issued a badge in the June-July 1975 period, also the disappearance time frame. When Mendez showed the badge list copy and asked again, she was silent for a long time, then said, "Maybe someone reused my badge." After the introduction, Mendez shifted to confronting identification results. He informed her that new DNA samples analyzed at Texas DPS matched completely with her biological sample stored in CODIS. Elena went pale for a few seconds, then said, "I donated blood in Fort Worth. Maybe someone used that sample to frame me." This response prompted the entire task force to note logical contradiction in the report, as the DNA in the iron box was from dried blood, not stored donation samples. When asked about the Smith & Wesson .38 she once owned, Elena confirmed selling it to an acquaintance years ago, but didn't remember the name. However, Texas licensing records from that era showed she never reported a transfer. As the interview turned to Jack Morales, Elena showed clear tension. She said, "He treated me unfairly, but still insisted. I never wanted to harm him." Mendez asked about the note signed JM and whether she had ever seen or received similar notes. Elena completely denied it, saying, "I don't know what he wrote. If anything, it was just personal." Throughout the session, she did not request a lawyer, but often avoided direct questions. The task force noted inconsistencies in her statements compared to objective evidence. At the end of the interview, Mendez recorded in the report, "Suspect maintained surface cooperation, but avoided confronting scientific data." Statements contain many contradictions, especially regarding badge issuance, weapon ownership, and time of leaving Texas. He collected a voluntary comparison DNA sample, which she agreed to sign for confirmation. The sample was sealed and immediately sent to DPS for comparison, later confirming complete match with the envelope blood, further strengthening the evidence. The comprehensive report, exceeding 50 pages from the trip, was submitted by Mendez to the Tarrant County Prosecutor's Office at the end of February 2012. In the conclusion, he wrote, "The direct interview in California confirms that suspect Elena Soto retains her original identity. No name change, no evidence of pathological memory loss. Her statements contradict DNA identification results, administrative data, and witness testimony. These factors are sufficient to forward the file to prosecution for consideration of charges under criminal reinvestigation procedures." The report was accompanied by all supporting documents, including the interview transcript, copies of identification results, photos of the evidence box, and comparison DNA confirmation. Mendez's final note in his notebook: 40 years ago, everything was based on speculation. Today, scientific evidence has spoken clearly. The remaining issue belongs to the court. After completing signatures, he submitted the file to the Tarrant County Chief Prosecutor to initiate the next legal step, concluding the nearly year-long suspect background investigation phase and officially moving the Morales case out of internal investigation into criminal processing under Texas state law. Upon receiving the full investigation file from Detective Harold Mendez, the Tarrant County Prosecutor's Office held a 2-day review meeting to assess criminal prosecution against Elena Soto. The file, nearly 300 pages thick, included DNA identification results, ballistics reports, witness statements, scene photos, and the California interview transcript. The prosecutor's office determined that the elements constituting a crime had been established: an identified victim, direct biological evidence linked to the suspect, and a chain of concealment behavior shown through unauthorized wall repairs at the City Hall Annex at the time of the victim's disappearance. Based on the identification results provided by Texas DPS, Chief Prosecutor Timothy Ward signed the preliminary indictment memo for manslaughter and concealment of a corpse under Section 19.04 of the Texas Penal Code. On October 12, 2012, a Tarrant County judge approved a federal arrest warrant for Elena Soto, with an extradition request from California. Texas authorities sent the warrant through the Fresno County Sheriff's Office, where the suspect resided. Upon notification, the enforcement unit coordinated with the cold case unit to plan a safe arrest without drawing crowds. Early morning, on October 14th, 4 officers were assigned to the North Fresno residential area, where Elena lived in a small single-story house. The arrest proceeded orderly, with no resistance. According to the report, when read her Miranda rights, Elena only said briefly, "I knew this would happen." She was taken to Fresno County Jail for processing before extradition. Fort Worth PD headquarters received confirmation at 10 a.m. that day. After verifying detention status, Mendez immediately flew to California to complete handover procedures. At the jail, he met Elena directly in the presence of local prosecutorial representatives. She remained calm, did not request private counsel, and accepted appointed public defense. The entire handover process took 3 days, including medical examination, identity verification, and signing prisoner transfer orders. On October 18th, Elena Soto was placed on a commercial flight to Dallas-Fort Worth, under supervision by 2 Texas police officers. Upon arrival, she was transferred directly to Tarrant County Detention for pretrial holding. At the same time, Fort Worth PD officially released case information to the press. The statement issued by the department's communications office confirmed the suspect in the 1975 disappearance of Officer Jack Morales has been arrested in California after more than 37 years. The case was reinvestigated and led to prosecution based on modern forensic evidence. The news immediately drew significant attention from local and statewide media. Outlets like the Fort Worth Star-Telegram, Dallas Morning News, and North Texas television channels covered it extensively, calling it one of the longest-standing cases solved in Fort Worth. Reporters flocked to the old police building, the original disappearance scene, for footage. On evening newscasts, faded old images of Jack Morales in uniform were replayed alongside shots of the now sealed City Hall Annex basement. The public expressed astonishment that a case thought forgotten for nearly 4 decades had been revived. Many who lived in Fort Worth at the time called television stations to share memories, recounting how the city was abuzz over an officer vanishing without a trace. As for Mendez, he declined all direct interviews, only making a brief statement at a joint press conference with Prosecutor Ward. Justice does not vanish. It only waits to be called. He also confirmed the arrest followed proper procedure and that the suspect would be tried in Texas under original jurisdiction. Elena was scheduled for her initial hearing at the end of October to formalize charges. Elena Soto's arrest not only shocked the Fort Worth police force, but also became a widely discussed topic regarding cold case units' ability to revive old cases. Many newspapers described it as clear proof of combining modern DNA technology with classic archived records. For the public, Jack Morales's name reappeared in headlines, no longer as a forgotten entry in the missing officer catalog, but as a real person, a police officer who sacrificed and finally had a chance for vindication. In the arrest phase conclusion report, Mendez briefly noted in the remarks, "After 37 years, Fort Worth has brought back the last woman who saw Jack Morales to where the story began." The report was forwarded to the Tarrant County Prosecutor's Office to complete the indictment file, marking the end of the investigation phase and the start of the first step in the official criminal proceedings of the Morales case. Immediately after Elena Soto's arrest and extradition to Texas, the cold case unit continued expanding inspections of the City Hall Annex basement area. Mendez believed that if the iron box was hidden in the wall, other physical traces might be buried with or near it. He obtained an additional search warrant from Tarrant County Court, approved quickly since the building was under renovation and still city-managed. A special forensic team from the Texas Rangers was mobilized to assist, bringing ground-penetrating equipment and precision excavation tools to avoid damaging old wall structures. The excavation began in early November 2012, conducted discreetly but tightly supervised. The north wall area, where the iron box was found, was remarked and expanded to about 3 square meters on both sides. When removing old cement layers, the technical team discovered vertical cracks mixed with irregular brick fragments, indicating post-construction structural changes. By the afternoon of the second day, while probing deeper than 40 centimeters, the drill hit an unusually hard object. When widening the wall hole, the identification team clearly saw another smaller cavity behind the brick layer, sealed with mortar and cement. Mendez ordered a halt to all mechanical equipment, switching to manual extraction. The mortar layer was carefully peeled until a dark mass mixed with lime dust appeared. When the forensic team shone strong lights, bone fragments became visible. They were small, brittle, and stuck to the mortar, initially hard to identify. One technician recognized a round piece, possibly a human shoulder joint. The discovery of human bones led to immediate area lockdown. Texas Rangers members drafted a new scene report, coded Annex Site 2, and reported to the Texas Investigation Bureau to send additional forensic experts to the scene. On the third day, excavation proceeded meticulously. In the wall cavity, about half a square meter wide, the forensic team found a total of 17 detached bone fragments, mostly from the shoulder, neck, and arm areas. Along with them were 3 small metal objects: a uniform button, a corroded brass nameplate, and a rotted leather strap fragment. When cleaning off dirt, the faint engraved text on the plate appeared: J. Morales, FWPD. Mendez stood silently looking at the object under the light, realizing this could be the answer to 37 years of searching. All bone fragments and objects were collected, sealed, and transported to the Texas State Forensic Lab in Austin, equipped for DNA identification and dental analysis. Identity determination was assigned to Dr. Rachel Levine's expert team, renowned for bone tissue reconstruction. Samples were separated, cleaned with enzyme solution, and subjected to biological identification. The process took nearly 3 weeks. The official report sent to Fort Worth PD at the end of November stated, DNA extracted from bone marrow matches completely with Jack Morales's reference sample in Fort Worth PD personnel files, confidence level 99.9998%. Simultaneously, restored dental records from an upper molar also matched the city dentist's file, who treated him in 1973. Regarding cause of death, the forensic team noted 3 key points. First, shoulder and neck bones had conical fracture patterns corresponding to close-range gunshot injury. Second, one neck bone fragment had a deeply embedded small metal piece identified as a .38 caliber bullet tip, matching the bullet type found in the iron box. And finally, fracture structure indicated immediate death, with no signs of post-mortem body movement. The report concluded, cause of death, penetrating neck trauma from close-range gunshot. Injury pattern and metal sample, consistent with .38 caliber weapon, Smith & Wesson Model 36 type. Along with DNA results, dental report, and bullet wounds, the identification agency confirmed the remains found in the City Hall Annex wall were Officer Jack Morales, missing since July 1975. Experts also determined bone positioning matched an estimated height of 1.80 m, consistent with his personnel file description. The uniform button still had dark blue fabric fibers attached, matching the color of Fort Worth police fabric from that era. Upon receiving the results, Mendez organized an internal press conference at headquarters. He stated briefly, "The Morales case is no longer a disappearance. This is a homicide." That statement was recorded in internal minutes as the official timestamp shifting investigation from missing person to homicide case. The Fort Worth PD Forensic Department immediately coordinated with Texas Rangers to complete the legal report sent to the Tarrant County Prosecutor's Office. It stated, biological, physical, and ballistics evidence all prove Officer Morales was shot dead at the City Hall Annex basement scene and the body hidden behind a newly built wall within 24 hours post-mortem. The discovered evidence was considered the final turning point ending decades of doubt. The bone fragments, nameplate, and button were placed in glass cases stored in Fort Worth PD's evidence room as official proof. The City Hall Annex basement, once a symbol of silence, now became a sealed historical crime scene marked by a brass plaque engraved, Annex Site, Morales Investigation, 1975-2012. When the forensic conclusion reached Prosecutor Timothy Ward, he wrote briefly in the report, cause of death, close-range gunshot. Victim, Officer Jack Morales, Fort Worth PD. Wall repair structure matches disappearance timing. Evidence and witnesses sufficient for first-degree murder prosecution. The case thought closed since 1975 now had an official resolution, no longer an unexplained disappearance, but a sophisticated murder concealed within the heart of Fort Worth's police headquarters. After forensic identification confirmed the remains in the City Hall Annex wall were Officer Jack Morales, the entire case file was transferred to the Tarrant County Prosecutor's Office to prepare for the criminal prosecution phase. This was one of the most complex files in Fort Worth judicial history, spanning over 37 years since the disappearance. Chief Prosecutor Timothy Ward personally oversaw evidence review, coordinating with ballistics experts, biological identification specialists, and the cold case unit to ensure every piece of evidence was presented clearly, legally, and court defensible. The official file submitted to Tarrant County Court included physical evidence and identification documents, 1 DNA results confirming the blood in the envelope matched Elena Soto's DNA, 2 DNA samples on the badge and shoulder bone, confirming Jack Morales's identity. 3. .38 caliber bullet found in the iron box, with rifling grooves matching the Smith & Wesson Model 36 registered to Elena. 4. The handwritten note signed J.M., identified with high probability as the victim's handwriting, and 5 witness statements from Guard Walt Grady, Engineer Thomas Barlow, and Administrative Secretaries Linda Carver and Deborah Penn, all confirming the presence of a woman with a temporary badge in the basement area at the time the wall was repainted. Additionally, supplemental technical evidence collected by the Texas Rangers team during the 2012 excavation was presented in detail: scene photos, wall structure maps, bone fragments with an embedded bullet tip, a corroded police nameplate engraved J. Morales, FWPD, and a dental report confirming a match with the victim's medical records. All were sealed in 12 evidence boxes, numbered under the current system, and stored in the court's central preservation room. In the over 40-page indictment, Prosecutor Ward stated, "Identification results and witness statements establish a direct relationship between suspect Elena Soto and the actions leading to Officer Jack Morales' death." Under Section 19.04 of the Texas Penal Code, shooting the victim in a public service area and then concealing the body by plastering the wall constitutes manslaughter with corpse concealment. The Texas State Forensic Report was attached, determining cause of death as penetrating neck trauma from close-range gunshot and time of death, matching the night Morales disappeared. One of the prosecution file's highlights was the tightly linked evidence chain, rare in old cases. Prosecutor Ward presented it in a logical diagram: blood-stained victim DNA bullet, fresh paint on wall witness statements. This chain formed a complete evidentiary path, allowing the prosecution to assert the presence of both suspect and victim at the scene. Beyond physical evidence, the file included a psychological social analysis by a DPS criminology consultant, describing Elena Soto's possible motive. The report noted prolonged personal conflicts with the victim, controlling behavior, jealousy, and violent tendencies in old records. This section was not direct evidence, but helped the future jury understand the crime's context. The prosecution also relied on original 1975 physical evidence, preserved intact in the Reeves file. Black and white photos of the freshly painted wall were restored, clearly showing the light paint layer and position corresponding to the body discovery area. Technician Carter Haynes's report and Lieutenant Reeves's handwritten notes were considered indirect evidence, proving illegal repairs immediately after the disappearance night. To enhance legality, Ward invited 3 independent experts to re-verify evidence sealing procedures and confirm an uninterrupted storage chain. Their conclusion: although evidence was discovered after decades, sealed in an unopened environment, the chain of custody remains valid and usable in trial. This was crucial, ensuring the court accepted all evidence as basis. On January 4, 2013, the prosecutor's office officially filed criminal charges with Tarrant County Court, with an indictment including 2 main counts: 1. Manslaughter with corpse concealment, Level 1. 2. Obstruction of justice and evidence destruction, Level 2. The indictment was received by Judge Rebecca Hill, scheduling a preliminary hearing for early March. That same day, Fort Worth PD issued a press release confirming the Morales case had entered the litigation phase. At the press conference, Prosecutor Ward stated, "We have a duty not only to the victim's family, but to the Fort Worth community. Evidence does not lie, and justice, though late, must be served." The news spread rapidly across Texas. Major outlets like NBC Dallas, CBS News Texas, and Associated Press ran stories. They called it one of Fort Worth's longest-standing cases brought to trial, praising the cold case unit's efforts. Public debate began about prosecuting a 70-year-old woman for a crime nearly half a century old, but legal experts affirmed no statute of limitations for murder. Mendez, who pursued the case for over a year, appeared briefly at the announcement. He did not speak at length, only saying, "What we did was complete the work my colleague, Lieutenant Reeves, started in 1975. The evidence told the story itself." That quote was widely reprinted as a symbol of cold case spirit, persistence, and faith that time cannot erase truth. On January 7, Judge Hill signed the official acceptance of State of Texas versus Elena Soto, case number TC 130147, with the charge manslaughter with concealment of a police officer's corpse while on duty. With the indictment filed and accepted, the Morales case entered a new phase, no longer a past investigation story, but a contemporary trial, where justice for the 1975 missing officer would first be weighed in a Texas courtroom. The trial of State of Texas vs. Elena Soto opened on the morning of March 12, 2013 at Tarrant County Court, Courtroom 3, presided over by Judge Rebecca Hill. More than 37 years after Officer Jack Morales' disappearance, the courtroom was packed with reporters, retired police, and Fort Worth residents who followed the case since the 1970s. The prosecution was led by Timothy Ward, with 3 assistant attorneys and cold case unit representatives. Defense consisted of 2 court-appointed lawyers representing Elena Soto, now 72, appearing in simple gray clothing, silver hair tied back, walking slowly. She did not look at the gallery, only bowing her head when led to the defendant's seat. Opening the trial, Prosecutor Ward presented the indictment to the 12-member jury. He stated, "We are here not to revisit the past, but to restore justice for a police officer murdered and hidden in the very building he served." He sequentially presented the evidence chain collected after case reactivation, the sealed iron box, police badge, victim's signed handwritten note, .38 caliber bullet, and DNA results showing Elena Soto's blood on the envelope with Jack Morales' DNA. Ward emphasized that modern science has spoken for those silent for over 30 years. Next, the prosecution called its first witness, Detective Harold Mendez, the reinvestigation lead. In nearly 2 hours of testimony, Mendez detailed discovering the iron box in the City Hall Annex basement wall, unsealing it, recording evidence, and sending it to Texas DPS for analysis. He confirmed all DNA, ballistics, and handwriting results matched the victim and suspect files. When the prosecutor asked, "Do you doubt the evidence authenticity?" Mendez replied, "No, because the wall containing the box was rebuilt the very night Morales disappeared." The next witness was Thomas Barlow, the 1975 city maintenance engineer. He recounted to the court that the morning after the disappearance, he saw a woman wearing a white blouse, petite, with a police temporary access badge, repainting the basement wall. When shown a photo of young Elena, Barlow nodded slowly. "I believe it's her." His testimony caused a stir in the courtroom. The prosecution also presented video testimony from Walter Grady, the former night guard, confirming he heard 2 heavy thuds from the basement the night Morales disappeared and was told by superiors not to log it. Additionally, Secretaries Linda Carver and Deborah Penn confirmed they were barred from the basement for the next 2 days and saw a strange woman with painting tools leaving the building. When presented in court, the evidence was displayed in glass cases, police badge number 3172, corroded nameplate, bullet with characteristic rifling marks, and blood-stained envelope. Prosecutor Ward read aloud the Texas DPS conclusion. Female DNA in the envelope matches Elena Soto. Male DNA on the badge matches Jack Morales. Bullet tip embedded in victim's shoulder bone matches rifling of Smith & Wesson .38, registered to defendant in 1974. Jury members fell silent as the photo of the bone with embedded bullet tip was projected. Defense opened cross-examination arguing no direct witness saw the defendant fire the shot. Lead attorney Howard Gleason stated, "It's all inference from evidence found after decades in conditions impossible to guarantee perfectly." He claimed DNA could be cross-contaminated and fresh paint might be routine maintenance. He also tried to cast doubt by suggesting Morales had work conflicts and could have been harmed by others. However, when the judge demanded witnesses or documents, defense provided none. In the third session, Elena Soto was called to the stand at her attorney's request. She spoke softly, sometimes haltingly, denying killing Jack Morales and saying, "I just wanted to leave Fort Worth, nothing to do with him." When the prosecutor asked about the matching blood DNA, Elena replied, "I don't know, maybe someone took my blood sample." Ward immediately pointed out the blood was dried on the envelope, impossible to steal as she claimed. Under intense questioning, Elena fell silent, then whispered, "I don't remember anything." Final arguments occurred on the trial's 5th day. Prosecutor Ward stood before the jury, recapping the entire evidence chain from DNA, bullet, fresh paint wall, to witnesses confirming the worker was a woman with a temporary badge. He concluded, "Science gave us truth, but your conscience will give us justice." Jack Morales was shot at close range, his body entombed in the wall, and the only person who could do it, with access and clear motive, is Elena Soto. Attorney Gleason countered in closing that the jury should not rely on modern technology to interpret the past, stressing lack of direct witnesses and over 30 years making memories and records faded. He urged the jury to consider reasonable doubt. Judge Hill instructed the jury to retire for deliberation at 3 p.m. Discussions lasted over 6 hours. At 9 p.m. that day, they returned to a silent courtroom. The judge asked, "Have you reached a verdict?" The foreperson stood, reading clearly. "We, the jury of Tarrant County, find defendant Elena Soto guilty on both counts, manslaughter and corpse concealment." In the gallery, many held their breath. Some old officers teared up. Judge Hill sentenced, under Sections 19.04 and 37.09 of the Texas Penal Code, defendant Elena Soto is sentenced to 25 years imprisonment at a Texas state correctional facility. Sentence to commence immediately. She showed no reaction, only bowing her head, hands clasped tightly. As police escorted her out, reporters crowded to capture the moment of the woman, once a ghost of a forgotten case, now facing justice. Immediately after the trial, Prosecutor Ward stated briefly, "No one rejoices in convicting the elderly, but justice has no age." Today, Jack Morales finally returns to the truth. Mendez, who led the investigation, told reporters, "I don't see this as a victory. This is the closure Fort Worth owed one of its own." Elena Soto's sentence dominated Texas newspapers for weeks. Media called it the Fort Worth cold case miracle, a symbol of modern science solving seemingly eternal mysteries. On the front page of the next day's Fort Worth Star-Telegram, a bold black and white photo of Jack Morales in uniform ran with the headline, "After 37 years, Justice Returns." The story of the Jack Morales case, a Fort Worth police officer missing since 1975, resolved after 37 years, is not just a personal tragedy, but a profound reflection of justice, faith, and community responsibility in modern American society. In this country, where trust in the legal system is the foundation of civic life, the story reminds us that justice may be delayed, but must never be forgotten. Jack Morales was shot, and his body hidden in a public service building, the very symbol of transparency and safety. Truth was covered by layers of paint, much like society sometimes tries to forget its own mistakes. However, Detective Harold Mendez and the cold case unit's persistent efforts prove truth always finds a way to emerge if people are brave enough to face the past. In today's technology era, where forensic science and DNA data solve cases faster than ever, the Morales lesson lies not in machines, but in human attitude, integrity, meticulousness, and loyalty to righteousness. In work, whether police, teacher, or ordinary citizen, everyone is accountable for their actions, as every trace, no matter how small, may resurface in the future. The story also reminds American society of collective responsibility, that justice is not just the system's duty, but every citizen's commitment to protecting truth. Thus, Jack Morales's memory becomes a lasting reminder that faith in justice is the foundation of fairness and dignity in American life today. If you believe justice, though delayed, is always worth seeking, please subscribe to the channel to join us in exploring more cold cases illuminated by truth. Thank you for following the story of Officer Jack Morales. See you in the next video, where we continue the journey to find forgotten justice.